The blind princess, the palace of Veora, was silent. Too silent for a place that once rang with music, laughter, and the voices of thousands. The wide marble halls stood empty. Golden torches burned low, and heavy curtains shut out the light of the stars. At the very heart of this silence lived the one no one dared to speak of aloud. Princess Lyrana. The blind daughter of the High Queen Lyrana had been blind since birth. Her eyes a pale silver with no light in them. The people whispered that her blindness was a curse, a punishment from the gods for her mother's pride. Others said she was simply weak and unfit to rule. She had grown up hidden behind veils and walls, never shown to other kingdoms, never allowed to walk outside the palace gardens without guards, yet, despite her blindness, Lyrana's spirit was not weak. She listened, she learned, and she memorized every corner of her chambers by touch. The sound of falling water told her where the fountains were. The smell of blossoms guided her steps in the gardens. She had learned to smile when others pitied her, though her heart burned with quiet anger. Her mother, the High Queen, loved her, but in secret in the council chambers. The queen spoke of heirs, of strong daughters who could carry the royal line forward. Never of Lyrana, the blind one hidden in shadows. For years she had been invisible, but fate has a way of breaking walls. One day a human arrived at the palace. His name was Ethan Cross, an engineer from Earth. His ship had been damaged by raiders, and he sought repairs in Veora's great port. The court allowed him inside because humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. His mind was sharp, his hands skilled, and his tongue clever enough to earn the queen's curiosity. It was by accident, or perhaps destiny, that Ethan discovered the hidden princess. He was working near the lower chambers when he heard the faint sound of a harp. The melody was soft, beautiful, yet filled with sorrow. Following the sound, he found himself standing before a locked door. The guards told him no one entered there, but Ethan, curious as always, lingered until the door opened from inside. Lyrana stood there, dressed in silver robes, her pale eyes unfocused, her hands still resting on the harp strings. She tilted her head at the sound of his breath. "Who is there?" she asked, her voice gentle but edged with strength. Ethan froze for a moment. He simply stared. The sight of her stirred something deep within him. Not pity, but an ache of recognition. He knew what it meant to be underestimated, to be judged by what others saw and not what one truly was. "I am Ethan," he said softly. "A human engineer." She smiled faintly. "A human so far from home. Tell me, Ethan of Earth, what does it feel like to see the stars?" Her question struck him like a blade. He realized she had never seen them. Not once. Not the burning suns, nor the swirling galaxies, nor even the gentle moonlight that kissed her planet. In that moment, Ethan made a silent vow. He would give her sight, whatever the cost. The next days passed in secret meetings. Ethan returned again and again to her hidden chamber. They spoke for hours. She asked him about Earth, about oceans, forests, storms, and the way sunlight turned water into diamonds. He listened to her describe the world she saw through sound and touch. And then, one night, he told her the truth. "On Earth, we have implants. We use them for the blind. They are small machines that connect to the brain, giving sight back to those who lost it." She was silent for a long moment. Her pale eyes turned toward him, though they saw nothing. "And you believe you could do this?" "To me?" "Yes," he said, his voice firm. "I can try. With your people's biotech and my engineering, it could work, but it will be dangerous. You must trust me." Lyrana's hands trembled. She had spent her whole life trapped in darkness, guided by others, doubted, pitied, mocked. The thought of seeing, even if only for a day, was a temptation too strong to resist. "I trust you," she whispered. From that night on, Ethan began gathering tools and parts in secret. He built designs late into the night, hiding them under his cloak when palace guards passed. Lyrana, though blind, listened to every sound, memorizing the clink of metal, the hum of energy. She felt hope for the first time in years, but not everyone was blind to their meetings. A maidservant saw the human leaving Lyrana's room. A guard heard whispers in the night. Rumors began to spread through the palace. Some whispered that the human sought to corrupt the princess. Others feared he was planning to weaponize her for his own kind. Still, Ethan pressed forward, for he knew time was short. Rival kingdoms had heard of the blind princess and plotted against Veora. A single spark could set the whole galaxy aflame. And in the middle of this storm stood Lyrana, blind yet waiting. her fate tied now to the hands of one stubborn human from Earth. Her final words to Ethan that night were quiet but filled with fire. "If you succeed, Ethan, I will no longer be their shadow, I will be their light." The implants. The nights in the palace grew longer, not because the stars dimmed, but because of the secret work hidden in the dark corners of the chambers. Ethan worked quietly, his tools spread across a marble table. Tiny sparks flickered as he shaped wires no thicker than a hair. Small chips glowed with faint blue light. Lyrana sat nearby, her hands folded in her lap, listening to the sounds she could not see. Every hum, every scrape of metal, every sigh from Ethan told her something about his progress. She could not see him bend over his work, but she could feel his focus in the air. "Your people must think you are mad," she said softly. "Breaking the silence, they do," Ethan answered without looking up. "Back home, they said I worked too much with machines. Trusted them more than people, but here, maybe machines can do what people cannot." Lyrana tilted her head. "Give sight to the blind?" He smiled faintly. "Exactly." The implant was almost ready. It was a strange mix of Earth technology and alien biotech he had borrowed from the palace's stores. Without the palace healers knowing, Ethan had slipped into their vaults at night, taking small pieces of living crystal, cells that pulsed with energy, and strands of alien silk stronger than steel. The risk was enormous if anyone discovered him. He could be executed for treason. Yet he continued, for in his heart, he carried the memory of her voice when she had asked, "What does it feel like to see the stars?" Finally, the night came when Ethan declared, "It is ready." Lyrana's breath caught. She reached out, her fingers brushing the smooth shape of the implant. It was small, almost delicate, a thin frame that would rest behind her eyes. "Wires like veins ready to merge with her nerves, will it hurt?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan admitted. "But pain is only the doorway beyond it. There may be sight." She nodded once, brave though her hands trembled. "Then let us open the door." They prepared the room in silence. Ethan sterilized the tools as best he could. His heart raced. This was no simple repair of a machine. This was a life. And not just any life, but that of a princess whose death could start wars. When the moment came, he placed his hand gently on her face. "You must trust me completely," he whispered. "I already do," she replied, her silver eyes turning toward the sound of his voice. The procedure began. The palace walls seemed to close in around them. Only the two of them existed in that chamber. Human hands working, alien heart enduring. Lyrana bit down on her lip as pain seared through her head. She could feel the strange machine digging into her nerves. Her hands clutched the chair until her knuckles burned white. She wanted to scream, but forced herself to remain silent. "Almost there," Ethan murmured, sweat rolling down his brow. His fingers trembled as he connected the final strand of alien crystal to the Earth circuit. Sparks leapt. For one terrifying moment, everything went black, not just for her, but for him too. As if the room itself lost all light. And then, Lyrana gasped, her pale eyes flickered with sudden brightness. At first it was unbearable. Shapes of fire, bursts of color, shadows dancing too fast, but slowly, the storm of light calmed and forms began to take shape. She blinked once, twice. Her vision was blurry, uncertain yet real. The golden torches glowed, the silver harp gleamed in the corner, and before her stood Ethan, tired, sweating, but smiling. I see you," she whispered. Her voice broke as tears welled in her new eyes. Ethan let out a laugh, half relief, half wonder. Then it worked. She reached out, her trembling fingers brushing his face. She traced the lines of his jaw, the curve of his mouth, the tired bags under his eyes. And now, for the first time, she saw what she touched. "You are nothing like I imagined," she whispered. He chuckled. "For better or worse?" "For better," she said, her lips curling into a smile. But the miracle carried more than joy. Already the palace walls carried whispers. A servant had seen the glow under her door. Another had heard strange voices. By dawn, the court would know the blind princess could see again. And not just see, her vision was different when she looked at Ethan. She saw not just his face, but the energy moving through him, the faint heat of his heart, the sparks of thought racing in his mind. When her gaze turned to the window, she could see faint trails of ships in the night sky. Hidden even from normal sensors, this is more than sight, she whispered, her voice full of awe and fear. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned her glowing eyes to him. "I can see lies, Ethan. I can see energy. I can see what others cannot." Silence filled the chamber. What began as a gift of sight had become something else, something greater, something dangerous. And outside the chamber, the whispers grew louder. Enemies of the queen, spies of rival kingdoms, even her own counselors, they would all want this power. Some would try to steal it. Others would try to kill her for it. Ethan looked at her, his heart heavy. Lyrana, the galaxy will not forgive this. Her eyes burned like twin stars as she whispered back, then let them come. I have seen the dark all my life, now at last. I will see the light, no matter what it costs. Whispers of power. The palace of Veora did not sleep that night. Whispers ran like fire through the halls. Servants spoke in hushed voices. Guards exchanged uneasy looks, and counselors gathered in secret corners by morning. The entire court had heard the rumor. The blind princess could see, but the whispers did not stop there. They grew, they changed. Some claimed she had been healed by forbidden magic. Others said she had been given the eyes of demons. Still others swore she could pierce the soul of any who lied to her. Lyrana walked through the garden at dawn, every leaf glowing with morning dew, every bird shimmering with colors she had no words for. She touched the roses she once knew only by scent. Her fingers trembled as she whispered, "So this is what beauty truly looks like." Ethan stood nearby. Keeping watch, his heart swelled at the sight of her wonder. Yet his mind was heavy with fear. He knew the galaxy would not see her gift as simply healing. They would see it as a weapon. And he was right, across the stars. In shadowed chambers of rival empires, the news spread like wildfire. Spies carried the tale to warlords and kings. A princess born blind now walked with glowing eyes, eyes that could see energy, lies, and secrets hidden from even the strongest scanners in the Council of Orath. A reptilian general slammed his clawed hand on the table. If this is true, then she is the most dangerous creature alive. One who can undo every cloak, every strategy, every hidden fleet. If she lives, our power dies. On the frozen world of Miraz, a queen wrapped in furs leaned forward as her spies whispered in her ear. "A human did this?" she asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. "Bring me this human. Bring me the secret of his machines." But danger was not only far away. It was already inside the palace. That very morning, the High Queen summoned Lyrana to the throne chamber. The hall was filled with nobles and counselors, all of them staring as the princess walked without a servant's guiding hand. The gasps were sharp when she lifted her face and opened her glowing eyes. "Daughter," the queen said slowly, her voice trying to mask both fear and pride. "The rumors are true?" Lyrana bowed her head. "Yes, mother, I can see." The hall erupted with whispers. Some voices praised the gods, others cursed them. One noble shouted, "This is unnatural. No alien blood carries such power." Lyrana's eyes turned toward him for the first time. She saw his face, his lips trembling, his eyes darting, the faint red glow of guilt around him. And she knew, without doubt, that this man had betrayed the crown in secret dealings. "You lie to the queen even now," she said calmly. Her voice cut through the hall like steel. The noble's face went pale. He stumbled back, shouting, "Witchcraft!" Lies, but the guards seized him. And under pressure, he confessed his crimes. The chamber froze in silence. No one dared whisper now. Everyone understood this was no simple healing. This was power. That night, Ethan and Lyrana sat together in her chamber. The glow of her new eyes reflected against the glass. She could see faint lines in the sky above. The trails of hidden ships. The hum of distant satellites. "You were right," Ethan said quietly. "The galaxy won't forgive this. They'll fear it. They'll come for you. And you?" she asked softly, turning her gaze to him. "Do you fear me?" He shook his head. "No, I fear for you. There's a difference." She smiled faintly, her fingers brushing the harp she had once played in darkness. "All my life I was called weak, cursed, unworthy. Now they look at me with fear, and perhaps that is better than pity." But Ethan frowned. "Fear can burn whole worlds, Lyrana. It can start wars that never end. And already the fires had begun that same week. An assassin slipped into the palace, cloaked in shadows. His dagger gleamed with poison meant to kill silently. But as he crept toward Lyrana's chambers, her eyes opened. She saw him, saw the ripple of energy around his blade. The nervous tremor of his heart before he could strike, she cried out, and guards stormed the hall. The assassin was captured, but the message was clear. Her enemies would not wait. The queen confronted Ethan, her voice heavy with suspicion. "You brought this upon us, human. What have you done to my daughter?" Ethan stood firm. I gave her what she always deserved, the chance to live free. To see, to lead, do not blame her for the galaxy's fear. Blame those who would rather keep her weak. The queen did not answer, but her eyes burned with doubt. Lyrana, however, stood taller than ever before. She no longer bowed her head, no longer hid behind veils. She looked at the court with glowing eyes and declared, "I will not be their shadow anymore. I will be their light, and if the galaxy comes for me, let them see the fire in my sight, far across the stars." Fleets began to move. Secret orders were given, armies prepared, and for the first time the blind princess, now with eyes of fire, stood at the edge of a storm she did not start, but one she could no longer escape. Betrayal in the palace. The palace of Veora glowed under silver moons. But inside its shining walls, shadows were thickening. The whispers that once praised the miracle now twisted into darker tones. Some nobles called Lyrana a blessing, but more called her a danger. For every traitor she exposed, 3 more grew fearful that their own secrets would be uncovered. The High Queen walked the halls with restless steps. Her daughter's new eyes unsettled her. Pride warred with fear. A mother wanted to protect her child, but a ruler feared what her counsel might do, and in those same halls enemies gathered in silence. Cloaked figures met in hidden chambers. The oldest nobles, those who had long manipulated the court, spoke in sharp whispers. "She is no longer blind," one hissed. "She sees what should never be seen. She has uncovered one traitor already," another growled. "If she looks at me, what will she discover next?" "Then she must be stopped," the eldest said coldly. "Before her eyes burn us all." That night, Ethan worked again in Lyrana's chamber, tuning the implants, making small adjustments to ease the strain on her mind. He noticed her growing headaches, the way her eyes glowed brighter when she was tired. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said. "Your body is still adapting. You need rest." Lyrana shook her head, her new gaze fixed on the golden ceiling. "Rest is for those who are safe." "I'm not safe, Ethan, not here, not anywhere." He paused, studying her face. "Then we leave, we find another world. Somewhere the galaxy can't reach you." But she turned to him sharply. "Run? I was born running, from pity, from shame, from darkness. Now that I can see, I will not run. Not ever again." Ethan saw the fire in her eyes and knew no words could turn her. The storm broke 2 nights later. The queen called a grand council. The throne chamber filled with nobles, generals, priests, and merchants. They gathered under golden arches, their robes shining like jewels, but their eyes hard and watchful. Lyrana walked beside her mother, her steps firm. No hand to guide her now. The glow of her gaze sent ripples of unease through the hall. Some looked at her with awe, others with hatred. As the council began, a noble stepped forward, tall and draped in crimson. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low to the queen, "forgive my boldness, but we must address the danger standing before us." He gestured sharply toward Lyrana. "This power is unnatural. It corrupts the order of our people. Already she accuses nobles, exposes secrets. How long before she turns her sight upon the queen herself?" Gasps echoed through the chamber. The queen's face tightened, but before she could speak, Lyrana's eyes flashed. She saw it, the faint shimmer of lies clinging to the man's lips, the dark stain of betrayal pulsing in his chest. "You are no loyal servant," she said calmly. "You sold maps of our fleet to the Orath Empire. You speak of danger. Yet it is your hands that drip with treason." The chamber erupted. Guards seized the noble as he struggled, shouting, "Witch! Witch!" But his confession spilled out under the queen's fury. The council turned into chaos, voices shouted. Some called for Lyrana to be crowned as savior. Others demanded she be executed as a curse. And then screams from the side doors. Armed men rushed in, blades gleaming. Their cloaks bore no sigils. Mercenaries hired in secret. They struck at guards, at counselors, at the queen herself. "Protect the princess." Ethan roared, drawing a weapon he had hidden. He fired blasts of blue light into the attackers, but more kept pouring in. Lyrana's vision cut through the chaos. She saw the hidden ones, the traitors who had summoned these mercenaries, nobles who stood back in false innocence while their blades tried to finish her. "There," she shouted, pointing. Her glowing eyes guided loyal guards. One by one, the betrayers were dragged down, their masks torn away, but the cost was blood. The throne chamber floor shone red. The queen herself was cut on the arm, saved only because Ethan threw himself between her and the blade. The battle raged until the last mercenary fell, silence heavy in the ruined chamber. Bodies lay still, the golden floor stained, breathing hard. The queen turned to her daughter. Her voice trembled. "Lyrana, what have you brought upon us?" Lyrana stood tall, her eyes burning brighter than the torches. "Not I, mother. They brought this upon themselves. Their lies were poison, their greed a knife. I only revealed what was already here." But even as she spoke, she saw it, the doubt in her mother's heart. The queen's love battled her fear. For what ruler could trust a daughter who could see every hidden thought, every secret sin? Later, when the hall lay quiet, Ethan found her staring at the stars through a broken window. "You've exposed too much," he warned. "They'll never stop now, not until you're dead." She turned to him, her voice steady. "Then I must stop them first. If the palace itself betrays me, then the galaxy outside will do worse, Ethan. This war has already begun, and somewhere in the shadows of Veora, surviving traitors fled to carry their message. The blind princess sees too much. She must die." The first strike. The fires in the throne chamber had barely gone out when the next storm arrived. Outside the palace walls, the skies of Veora burned with streaks of light, fleets moving in the distance, shadows of warships blotting the stars. News came like thunder. The Orath Empire had crossed the border. Their warships slipped past patrols under cloaked drives. They claimed their purpose was simple: to protect the galaxy from the cursed princess whose eyes threatened balance. But everyone knew the truth. This was no mission of protection, it was invasion. The queen gathered her council, but the hall was fractured. Half the nobles shouted for surrender, half screamed for war. The queen's voice shook as she demanded silence. But her people looked past her now. Their eyes turned to the glowing princess standing in the center of the chamber. "Daughter," the queen said in a voice sharp with fear, "what do you see?" Lyrana closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Her vision cut beyond stone walls, beyond clouds, beyond the very atmosphere. She saw the enemy fleet hovering in the void, hundreds of ships hidden by cloaks, yet clear to her like shadows against fire. "They are here," she whispered. "They are many, but they are not ready for what we will become." The council gasped. Some shouted for her removal, others begged her to lead, but Lyrana ignored them all. She turned instead to Ethan, who stood quietly in the shadows. "What do we do?" she asked him. Not as a princess, but as a friend who trusted his mind. Ethan's jaw tightened. "We prepare. We cannot outnumber them, so we must outthink them." That night, Ethan walked the old armories of Veora. He found relics of forgotten wars, shields too heavy for aliens to carry, cannons gathering dust, traps once laid in ancient battles. He ran his hands over the machines and whispered, "These can work, if used differently." Lyrana followed him, her eyes glowing in the darkness. She saw what he could not: the hidden faults in walls, the weak spots in gates, the thin lines where enemy ships would slip through. Together, human mind and alien sight forged a plan. When dawn came, the first strike fell. The Orath fleet descended like a storm, missiles blazing, fire raining upon the capital. Palaces and towers shook. People screamed in the streets. The enemy thought it would be easy, a broken kingdom ruled by a blind girl, but they did not expect Ethan's earthborn tricks. At the palace gates, massive statues collapsed suddenly, crushing invading troops. Hidden explosives buried under the cobblestones tore enemy tanks apart. Soldiers ran forward only to fall into narrow pits lined with energy spikes. From the sky, Orath warships rained destruction. But as they drew closer, strange signals scrambled their targeting. Ethan had rerouted old communication towers to send false coordinates. The ships fired blindly. Missing their targets, Lyrana stood on the balcony, her eyes blazing. She shouted to the defenders below, her voice ringing across the city. "Do not fear their shadows, I see them. Strike where I command." And wherever she pointed, the defenders struck true. Arrows pierced cloaked soldiers. Cannons blasted ships hidden in the clouds. The people of Veora, who once pitied their blind princess, now followed her with fire in their hearts. But the battle was not without cost. Ethan fought in the courtyards, his weapon burning in his hands. He saved guards, pulled wounded to safety. Yet for every enemy that fell, another came. The palace shook as towers collapsed under bombardment. Inside the war room, the queen's face was pale. "We cannot hold them," she whispered. "Their numbers are endless." But Lyrana's voice was steady. "Then we do not need to hold them. We bleed them, make them fear us, make them believe we are stronger than we are." The queen stared at her daughter, unsure if this was wisdom or madness. Hours passed. The battle raged. The first strike had been meant to crush Veora in a single blow. But by nightfall, the Oreth fleet retreated to orbit, their soldiers scattered, their generals furious. In the silence after battle, fires burned across the city. Smoke curled into the sky. Families wept for the fallen. Yet there was also something else. Hope. For against all odds, they had not been destroyed. In the ruined courtyard, Ethan found Lyrana kneeling beside the wounded. Her robes were torn, her eyes dim with exhaustion. Yet she smiled faintly. "We stood," she whispered. For the first time, we stood. Ethan knelt beside her, his hand resting on hers. "But they will come again stronger. They won't stop now. You've humiliated them." Lyrana's gaze turned to the sky, her glowing eyes piercing the smoke. In the distance, she could already see more fleets gathering, rival empires watching, deciding whether to join the war. "They wanted me to remain in shadows," she murmured. "But instead, I have lit a fire, and now the galaxy will burn." And so, the first strike ended, not with Veora's fall, but with the birth of a war that would spread across the stars, a war sparked not by armies, but by the choice of one human and one princess who refused to bow. War across the stars. The first strike had been repelled, but victory carried a heavy price. Veora's towers still smoked, its streets still bled. The people buried their dead even as they whispered of miracles. The blind princess who now saw through shadows had turned defeat into survival. But survival was only the beginning. In the days that followed, word spread far beyond Veora. Traders carried tales to distant worlds. Soldiers repeated them in hushed voices. Even enemies who once laughed now listened with unease. "The princess with glowing eyes," they said. "The one who sees lies, fleets, and fate itself." The galaxy was vast, but fear travels faster than light. In the grand halls of the Oreth Empire, generals shouted in rage, "We should have crushed them!" One snarled, slamming his fist on the war table. "Instead, a girl humiliated us, guided by a human who plays with machines." The Emperor of Oreth, draped in steel and crimson, leaned back in his throne, his eyes cold. "Then we do not send soldiers. We send fleets, burn their world, and let none speak her name again." And so the war began. Hundreds of Orath warships tore through the void, their weapons gleaming like fire. But by then, Veora had changed. Under Ethan's guidance and Lyrana's vision, the broken kingdom had become a fortress. Lyrana stood in the command chamber of the fleet's flagship. Her eyes glowed brighter than the stars beyond. Where others saw empty blackness, she saw threads of energy, hidden trails, weak points in enemy formations. "There," she pointed, her voice steady. "Their cloaked ships wait behind the third moon. Strike now before they reveal themselves." Her generals exchanged uneasy glances, trusting her sight was difficult. But when they obeyed, cannon fire lit the sky, and hidden ships exploded before they could strike. Gasps filled the chamber. No longer could anyone doubt her vision. Ethan stood beside her, feeding her earthborn ideas. Don't meet their numbers head-on. Split them. Isolate their heavy carriers. Make them chase shadows, not us. Together, they reshaped the battlefield. Veoran ships darted like wolves, striking fast, vanishing behind moons. Each trap left Orath vessels burning in silence. Yet the war was not fought only in space. On the ground, spies crept, assassins struck, palaces shook under sabotage. Lyrana's glowing eyes caught many, but not all. Every day was a knife's edge between life and death. One night, after a brutal battle above the asteroid belt, Ethan found Lyrana alone on the observation deck. She stared into the endless stars, her eyes dim from exhaustion. "You push yourself too hard," he said, resting a hand on her shoulder. She shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes, I see more, Ethan. Paths, choices, futures. Some lead to peace, most lead to fire. And I fear. I am dragging us all into fire." Ethan's voice was low but firm. "You didn't start this war. They did. You're just refusing to bow." Her lips curved in a sad smile, yet refusing to bow may burn the galaxy. Even as she spoke, new fleets gathered. Other empires watched the war and began to choose sides. Some allied with Orath, fearing the power of her eyes. Others quietly sent ships to Veora, curious if the princess could turn the tide. Soon the stars themselves became battlefields. Above the storm world of Rios, Lyrana guided her fleet through lightning-filled skies. She pointed where no scanner could see. "There!" Strike beneath the clouds, and enemy ships fell burning into the storms. In the frozen rings of Selith, she saw hidden mines before they detonated. Saving thousands of lives, her legend grew. Soldiers began chanting her name. Her people, once ashamed of her blindness, now lifted banners of her glowing eyes. But with fame came greater danger. The Orath Empire placed a bounty on Ethan, dead or alive. Believing he was the human brain behind her victories, during a skirmish near the Veil Nebula, assassins boarded their ship. Ethan fought with tooth and nail, barely surviving as Lyrana cut them down with her guards. Afterward, she held him trembling. "They come for you because of me." He met her gaze without fear. "Then let them come, I'll stand until I can't." Still, the war grew darker. For every victory, more enemies joined the fight. Fleets that once had nothing to do with Veora now burned worlds in the name of balance. The galaxy itself seemed to tilt into chaos, and through it all, Lyrana's power deepened. Her eyes now saw more than lies or cloaked ships. She saw echoes of choices, flickers of what might come. She began to predict movements before they happened. Battles turned before they began, but with this gift came a terrible weight. For in the shadows of her sight, she saw something vast stirring, something ancient. Watching, waiting, a storm greater than fleets or empires, she whispered one night to Ethan, "I fear my gift is not only sight, it is awakening something older than us all." Ethan frowned. Then we prepare like we always do together. And as fleets clashed across the stars, the galaxy realized a truth too late. What began as one princess regaining her sight had become a war that could tear the heavens apart. The blind princess now commanded fire across the void, and beside her, a human engineer carried Earth's cunning into the heart of a galactic storm. The war across the stars had only just begun. The final choice. The war had burned across the stars for months. Worlds lay in ruins, fleets shattered, and families broken. The name of the blind princess was now spoken in every corner of the galaxy. Not as weakness, but as power. Her glowing eyes had turned the tide of countless battles. Yet the war showed no sign of ending. From the highest throne worlds to the smallest colonies, whispers grew louder. Some called her savior. Others called her monster. But all agreed on one thing. Her sight was changing the galaxy itself. In the command chamber of Veora's flagship, Lyrana stood tall, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. Ethan was at her side, his face marked by exhaustion. His hands bore scars from endless battles, but his resolve had not weakened. Reports poured in, fleets clashing at Selith, colonies rebelling at Orath's borders. "The galaxy was bleeding, Ethan," Lyrana whispered, her voice low. "I see too much now. Every path I look upon leads to fire. There is no road untouched by war." He turned to her, his jaw tight. "Then we choose the fire that burns quickest, before it devours everything." But she shook her head. "No, there is another path, one that ends the war. But it will cost me everything." Before Ethan could ask, alarms blared. The largest Orath fleet yet had arrived. 1,000 ships filled the void, led by their emperor himself. His flagship was a monster of steel, larger than cities, bristling with weapons. The final battle had come. The Queen of Veora gave her command. "All forces prepare to defend our homeworld." But as the ships took formation, Lyrana stepped forward, her eyes glowing like suns. "No," she said firmly. "This war ends today." She walked to the balcony of the flagship, her gaze locked on the enemy armada. Through her sight, she saw not only ships but the very currents of energy binding the galaxy. She saw threads connecting lives, choices, futures, and she saw the truth. The implants had done more than restore her sight. They had awakened ancient DNA within her people, a dormant power long forgotten. She was now more than princess, more than queen. She was a living key to something vast, something older than empires if she unleashed it. She could bend the galaxy to her will, force peace by crushing all who opposed her. But if she restrained it, if she chose trust instead of domination, the galaxy might tear itself apart in endless war. The choice was hers. Ethan stepped to her side. His voice soft. Lorana, listen to me. You are not a weapon. You are not their curse. You are their hope. Whatever you choose, I'll stand with you. Tears shimmered in her glowing eyes. For all her power, his words cut deepest. He saw her not as a queen, not as a goddess, but as a person, a woman who once sat blind in the shadows. Longing to see the stars, she raised her hand, and the battlefield froze. Her power spread like light across the void. Enemy ships faltered, weapons went dead, soldiers on both sides dropped their arms, staring as an overwhelming wave of energy filled their minds, and then they heard her voice. Not through speakers, not through machines, but directly within their hearts. Enough, she said, her voice echoing like thunder and like song. I have seen lies, I have seen greed, I have seen the endless fire of war. But I have also seen truth and love and courage. The galaxy will not burn under my eyes. It will live. The Orath Emperor roared in rage, trying to order his fleets. But his voice was drowned out. Soldiers refused to fire. Generals dropped to their knees. Even his flagship trembled as systems went dark. In that moment, Lorana released her final choice. She poured the full power of her sight into the stars, burning away cloaks, lies, and shadows, every secret weapon exposed, every hidden fleet revealed, every traitor unmasked. The galaxy stood naked under her gaze, and then she let it go. Her body shook, the glow fading from her eyes. The implants burned, smoke curling from the wires. She collapsed into Ethan's arms, blind once more. Lyrena! He cried, holding her close. She smiled weakly, her silver eyes now pale again. Do not grieve, Ethan. I saw the stars, I saw everything, and now the galaxy has a chance. The fleets withdrew, leaders humbled. The war ended not with fire, but with one woman's sacrifice in the years that followed. Songs spread of the blind princess who gave sight to the galaxy, only to return to her darkness. Some called her a saint, some called her legend, but to Ethan, she was simply Lorena, the girl who once asked him what the stars looked like. And every night as he stood under the sky, he whispered softly, They're beautiful, Lorana, just as you always imagined.